Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Duggleby, Director of Alumni Relations at the College of Law. Welcome to the College of Law's Law Alumni Weekend 2020, a virtual conference. Thank you for joining us for today's Disability Law and Policy program. We have a sizable audience. Over 84 people have registered to attend today. We are in webinar mode, which means that the audience can hear and see all of our panelists, but the audience is not on video and is muted to prevent noise interference. But we welcome all of your questions. Please use the Q&A pod to send them along. We will monitor the board and include them in our discussion as much as possible. Please note that the chat feature has been disabled, except to convey universal guidance to all of you during the program. Please also know that we are recording our session. The recording will be available on the College of Law's website. We thank our CART reporter, Linda Frost, for her services today, and our live captioning sponsor, the Loatis firm. And members of our audience can use instantaneous translation of the spoken language during this program by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of your meeting window. Many thanks also to our Law Alumni Weekend sponsor, Hancock and Estabrook. I would now like to introduce Professor Arlene Cantor, Director of the Disability Law and Policy Program, and Laura J. and L. Douglas, Meredith Professor of Teaching Excellence. Arlene?
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It's really an exciting day, and I'll try to hold my enthusiasm and get to our agenda today. The first thing I want to do is thank everyone for being here, particularly the Law Alumni team, Kristen and Sophie DeGenius and their team of people in the Office of Advancement. I want to thank Joel Whitney and Kyle James Davis from the IT team, as well as Linda Frost, our CART reporter. I want to thank our amazing DLPP faculty that's grown. Not only Michael Schwartz, who's the director of our clinic, but also Professor Cora True-Frost, an expert in international human rights law, Suzette Melendez, who directs the Family Law Clinic, and our newest addition, Daron Dorfman, with a specialty in health law and disability studies. I'm going to introduce the panelists shortly, and of course I thank them. I want to thank our amazing Disability Law Policy Program students. Many of you are here today for the past 15 years. We've loved teaching you and getting to know you. And then I'd like to thank most of all our dean, who has supported our program and is going to take a few minutes now to introduce the event. Dean Boyes.
Thank you, Professor Cantor, and it's a privilege to be invited to this morning's program and to welcome all of you to the College of Law's 2020 Law Alumni Weekend. The conversation that we're about to have in this session appropriately celebrates both the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the 15th anniversary of the college's Disability Law and Policy program. It will also shine a light on the many ways still that we must continue the work and advance the field of disability law. To this day, ableism denies access and opportunity for far too many of our fellow citizens, from employment and healthcare to participation in community life. With the program that Professor Cantor founded 15 years ago, and under her leadership, the College of Law and our students are poised to continue this important work. I am proud to be the dean of a law school and at a university that places so much emphasis on the rights of people with disabilities and the need to promote laws and policies on their behalf so that they too may participate in society to the fullest extent possible. Thank you for incorporating this timely and urgent discussion in our Law Alumni Weekend program. Today's panel exemplifies College of Law alumni excellence and the extraordinary careers that begin here. I reiterate our gratitude to Carla, Daniel, Robert, Kurt, Jennifer, and Julie for being here this morning. I look forward to learning from you today, and happy 15th anniversary to the Disability Law and Policy program, with gratitude to Professor Cantor. Congratulations to you and all of our students and alumni who helped to develop DLPP into the first-rate, one-of-a-kind program that it is. And above all, thanks for all that you and the members of our audience do for the College of Law and in the field on behalf of people with disabilities. I will have to leave shortly for another meeting, but I wish you a happy session, an informative session, and again, a happy anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Boyes. I've just been informed that we have not been connected yet to the CART reporter. So what I'd like to do, Joel and Kyle, if you can be with me here, is to share my screen, where I'd like to give my brief introduction to this panel and to the Disability Law Policy Program's history and accomplishments. So I'm going to share my screen now until our CART reporter comes in so that people can read along with what we're hearing. We will not ever do events at the law school unless there is universal access for all. So that's how we're going to adjust today. So give me 1 minute and I'm going to share my screen. Okay. As soon as our CART reporter joins us, if someone can let me know, I can close off the screen so we can all see one another. Thank you again for being here. And I just want to say a few words about where we've been and kind of where we hope to go. Gathering today in honor of the 30th anniversary of the ADA and the 15th anniversary of the Disability Law Policy Program is both a joyous and solemn occasion. It's a joyous occasion to me because never before in the history of the US have so many people with disabilities been employed, graduated from high school, college, and law school, and entered their chosen profession, including law. Approximately 1 in 4 adults, or 61 million people in the United States, now identify having a disability. They are lawyers and judges, CEOs and teachers. They are our friends and our neighbors. The integration of people with disabilities into society is in large part the result of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was enacted in 1990 to remove the many barriers to inclusion that people with disabilities face. Upon signing the ADA, President Bush declared that every man, woman, and child with a disability can now pass through once closed doors into a bright new era of equality, independence, and freedom. And on that note, I understand that the CART reporter is here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just give me 1 minute, please. And maybe, let's see. I'm having trouble there. Okay. Did we end the sharing of the screen? Looks that way. Okay. Can I have a nod here? We ended the sharing of the screen and CART is now rolling ahead. Great, okay. So President Bush declared that everyone is entitled to equality, independence, and freedom, but my question is, are they? Although children and adults with disabilities are no longer routinely locked away in institutions out of sight and out of mind, COVID-19 has brought into view a not so well-kept secret, that people with disabilities in our country continue to experience discrimination, exclusion, and even death on account of their disability. More people with disabilities have died of COVID-19 than any other group in our population, particularly those in nursing homes and other congregate living facilities for people with developmental disabilities. Today, there are more people with disabilities in prison or homeless and being killed than ever before in our history. Ableism in society is alive and well. But in addition to the bipartisan Congress that began to address this discrimination in the ADA, it was Justice Ginsburg, more than the language of the ADA itself, in my view, who articulated really for the first time the meaning of equality for people with disabilities. It is therefore fitting this morning to recognize the enormous impact of the late Justice Ginsburg on the lives of people with disabilities. And I want to just take a minute to do this. Although she's best known for her decisions in gender and race discrimination, there are 2 cases I'd like to mention specifically and her language in them. In 1999, Justice Ginsburg delivered the decision of the court in Olmstead versus LC and EC. Here, the Supreme Court held that the segregation of individuals with disabilities in institutions constitutes a serious and pervasive form of discrimination. She wrote that the institutionalization wrongly perpetuates a stereotype that people with disabilities are, quote, incapable or unworthy of participating in community life. 5 years later, in Tennessee versus Lane, a case brought by 2 people who use wheelchairs seeking entrance to their local courthouse, Justice Ginsburg wrote in her concurrence that, quote, including individuals with disabilities among people who count in composing, quote, we the people, Congress understood that the ADA would sometimes require not blindfolded equality, but responsiveness to difference, and not indifference, but accommodation. Yes, the ADA opened doors for people with disabilities, but in my view, it was Justice Ginsburg who reminded us that what people with disabilities want is not charity, but equal rights, and that equality for people with disabilities may at times mean not the same treatment, but also the need for accommodations that will allow them to achieve truly equality in their potential. I founded the Disability Law and Policy Program 15 years ago with these principles in mind. The DLPP was founded not only to support the development at that time of the new and flourishing field of disability law, but to support the inclusion of students with disabilities in Syracuse Law School and in the profession generally and beyond. Since its founding, the DLPP has graduated hundreds of students who have earned joint degrees in law and disability studies, education, social work, and international relations, public administration. They've enrolled in our classes, our clinics, and externships. They've received the College of Law certificate in disability law and policy. And they've gone on, these students with and without disabilities, to secure disability law-related jobs and jobs in many other fields too. These students have testified before Congress, the United Nations Conference and State Parties, the UN Commission on the Status of Women. They've represented clients in court and administrative hearings, submitted amicus briefs, comments and proposed regulations, turned their papers into publications, volunteered or worked at local, national, and even international disability organizations. And they've acted as mentors for incoming and current students. Thank you again, all of you. Our Disability Law Policy Program has sponsored short study programs to Vietnam with Professor Schwartz and to Strasbourg and the European Court of Human Rights with Professor True Frost. More opportunities are being planned. Our Disability Law and Policy Program also includes now lawyers from around the world. These lawyers come to us for the LLM program, and next year we begin a new SJD, PhD program, that's right, at the law school for many different areas of law, including international and comparative disability law. And within the College of Law, our students have worked to raise awareness about the rights of all people with disabilities to be included, to be able to feel they belong and valued through our Disability Law Society. This year, the DLPP is honoring our 15th anniversary, not only with this panel and a reunion tomorrow, but with a special volume of the Law Review, which will include articles by the nation's leading US disability law scholars. We will also have a variety of speakers this year, including people who actually helped write the ADA and continue to work for its implementation. And this year, the DLPP is a proud recipient of a highly prestigious international award for our innovation as the most extensive disability law school program in the world. And you know what? After 15 years, we're just getting started. Tomorrow, we'll hear from many more of our impressive DLPP alumni who are out there, I know, in the audience. So please join us for the DLPP Reunion, where we will meet with these alumni as well as some of our current terrific students. I'd like to now introduce our panel, and you'll see why I love doing what I do. Their full bios can be seen on the webpage, but I'm going to just give one sentence or two brief introduction to each of them, who you'll hear from now. First, Carla Villar Lopez is an attorney from Peru. Carla received her LLM at the College of Law in 2017, and she currently works with the Office of the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights of persons with disabilities in Geneva, Switzerland. She is also the first law student ever to receive Syracuse University's prestigious Robert B. Menschel Public Service Fellowship. Daniel Van Sant is a disabled attorney who practices special education law at Disability Rights Iowa, where he represents students with disabilities and their families. He's also an adjunct professor at Drake University, where he teaches an undergraduate course on disability culture and law. Daniel received his joint degree in law and disability studies with the School of Education in 2016. Robert Bareilly is a supervising attorney at Disability Rights California and part of the Disability Rights California's Youth Practice Group, where he represents youth with disabilities in special education and disability discrimination matters. He also received his joint degree from the law school and the School of Education in 2013. Court Werber graduated the College of Law in 2008 with a DLPP certificate in disability law and policy. And he is one of this year's 5 law alumni honor recipients. Congratulations, Court. He is currently the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Mayor's Commission on People with Disabilities. Jennifer Conrad Wolzheimer is an education program specialist with the U.S. Department of Education in the Monitoring and State Improvement Planning Division of the Office of Special Education Programs in DC. She received her joint degree in Law and Disability Studies in 2006. And finally, but hardly last but not least, is Julie Morse. Julie Morse has been a staff attorney at Legal Services of Central New York since she graduated the College of Law in 2005. At Legal Services, Julie has represented clients with disabilities in education and home care cases, and more recently, she represents clients in public benefits cases. She and her classmate, Crystal Duty, who I hope is out there today too, who also works at our local Legal Services office, are the reason why I founded the Disability Law Policy Program. They wanted more. They wanted more courses and knowledge and opportunities to learn about the field of disability law. How could I say no? I didn't, and I'm so glad. We're going to now turn to the panel portion of our morning. And what we've done here is convened a panel of disability law alum who work in different types of jobs related to disability law. And together we pose some questions that we'd like them to answer. I would like to encourage you, please, to provide questions that you may have in our question and answer section on the Zoom link. Kristen will review those questions, send them over to me, and after we presented the panel, we're going to open it up for these questions and answers. So at any time over this next few minutes or hour, please feel free to add your questions, and we will be sure to try to get to all of them at the end of our panel. Thank you. How's everyone doing here? Okay, I have to ask, right? That's what I'd ask always throughout my classes. How's everyone doing? Okay. I'm going to start with the first question, and that'll be directed to Julie and Bobby and Carla. And that question is, tell me why you decided to attend the College of Law. There are a lot of law schools, a lot of different programs. Why SU College of Law? And similarly, when you came to the College of Law, did you know that you wanted to practice disability rights law? If so, then why? And then why did you decide to go into this area of law after graduation? So that's how I'd like to get started here. And why don't you take it away, Julie?
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I have to say, listening to all of this, I'm getting teary-eyed. And so hopefully I make it through it all without crying, because it really is impressive that this has been going on for 15 years now. But I got interested in disability law when I was an undergrad at the University of Texas at Austin. I actually worked at the Center for Independent Living in Austin, Texas one summer. It opened up an entire new world for me. I ended up looking for a class to learn more about people with disabilities, and found a class in the School of Social Work, which was not anywhere near my major, and had an amazing professor there who Professor Cantor has now met too, which is great, Michelle Ballin, who just made me think, why would I want to do anything else in life besides work with people with disabilities? And boy, are people with disabilities getting screwed in so many ways, right? And so when I graduated, I started to look for a law school where I could do a joint degree in law and disability studies, and there was nowhere in the country that had that at the time, nothing. And I contacted Steve Taylor at the School of Education and said, you know, this is what I'm interested in. I want to be an attorney, but I want to be an attorney for people with disabilities, but I do not want to do that as a non-disabled person without having a background in disability rights law, because I think that would be incredibly rude of me, presumptive of me. And so I came up to look at the law school and the disability studies program on a very cold weekend in January, and met with Arlene and said, this is what I want to do. And she said, of course, yes, we can do, yes, we've been thinking about this, and Steve Taylor and I have been talking about this, and why wouldn't we do this? So there was no choice for me but Syracuse University College of Law, because it was the only school in the country for a very long time that ever had a joint degree in law and disability studies and understood the importance of it. So I came here to SU knowing that I would do the joint degree in disability studies, knowing that I would practice disability rights law. And have just met an amazing group of people who are all doing disability rights law. Jen's a year behind me in school, and we have become lifelong friends, right? And so it's just been an amazing experience being at the law school.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Carla, Julie came from Texas. Carla came from Peru. Can you fill us in a bit about how you ended up at Syracuse College of Law and going into that area of law?
Yes, sure. First of all, thanks to the organizers, and say happy anniversary to the Disability Law and Policy Program. Well, in my case, when I joined Syracuse University College of Law, I have already been a lawyer in Peru, working on human rights. And I started actually my career in disability rights with a regional project on legal capacity and supported decision making. So I started with this research, and that's how I start my interest in the field. And then I had the opportunity to receive the scholarship from Open Society Foundation, as many of other friends from different parts of the world. And I arrived to Syracuse, and I was super excited because I hear and the Disability Law and Policy Program is a reference worldwide. So I was very excited to join the program and the Syracuse University College of Law. And of course, looking now from now have been some years after I finished the LLM, and I cannot be more happy for this opportunity, because I had the access to very high quality courses related with disability rights, and not only the courses, the content, but also to interact with people from different backgrounds and different countries. That is always a so enriching experience. And also a second point that I will highlight is the supportive environment that you receive when you are there, not only by professor, but also mentors and the whole community that embrace you there as part of one member of the community. And the third point, the networking that you do as well, and all the opportunities that you will and you access once that you are there. You have, I had the opportunity to be part of the Disability Law Society. And really you can see in every detail and every experience as a student, how the Syracuse University is a very inclusive environment for people with disabilities, and how they promote in every course or activity this. No, it's not only a discourse, it's really in practice, as what we have now with the accommodations that have been provided. And these things is not, could be like the normality now in Syracuse, but it's not like the case in many other parts. So this is really something that I appreciate for the experience being there.
Thank you, Carla. Bobby, do you want to chime in? And Cord, Daniel, and Jen, you're welcome to answer as well. So maybe Bobby, and then whoever else wants to jump in.
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So I have a similar experience as Julie. My background was in special education. I studied that in college, and I self-taught, and then I taught in a special ed classroom for a little bit after college. So I knew that I wanted to go to a law school where I could immerse myself in disability law. I did my research. By that time, the Dlpp existed. There was a website. So I really had a lot of information at my disposal. I also met with Steve Taylor, and I just felt like this was, would be the best experience for me, where I could gain the knowledge I needed and hit the ground running as an attorney. And, I've been practicing law now for 7 years, and I can say I do feel that that was true. I mean, at Syracuse, not only the coursework and the clinic with Michael, I interned with Julie at Legal Services of Central New York. I worked at the Burton Blatt Institute. I just got a lot of hands-on experience that I still use in my practice today. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, thanks. It's Court Wayberg here. I also remember looking as a person with multiple disabilities, I was trying to find a way to do disability law work, and I did not come from Texas. I came from just down the road at Hamilton College in upstate New York, and I visited the school and met Arlene as well as Julie and Jennifer, who were very persuasive in getting me to sign up. Actually, the day I was there. And I was super excited that there was a dedicated field where I could learn about how to practice disability law, as well as there being a student group as well, the Disability Law Society, just to have all aspects of the law school where there were people with disabilities represented. You know, I've, over the years, you know, practicing law, have often thought back to Arlene's disability law course where we read all the ADA regs cover to cover, and that has really come in handy. Just recalling the CFR, which the audience I know glazes over, but you know, that can come in handy. You know, just thinking about all those rules, and just, you know, between that and just practicing in the clinic, really got to use that over the years, and even now as I work in local government. So it really was a life-changing decision for me.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope my current students are listening, and the ones next semester will take disability law when I assign all those pages and the regulations. I hope they're listening. Right. Thank you.
If I could
Jennifer,
add
go
as
ahead.
well.
Jennifer, yeah.
So I'm from San Diego, California originally, and I wanted to pursue law as a person with a disability. When like Julie, when I looked for a law school, Syracuse was the only one that had an outright disability law program. And there were other universities at the time that I could kind of create something, but I was really interested in looking at something that kind of engaged me and embraced the disability and the difference and didn't think of it as an other. And I definitely think that Syracuse provided that. I remember coming from San Diego, and everybody still now, I've graduated, I've been gone for years, and still now everybody asks me, why would you leave San Diego and go to Syracuse? And my one answer is Arlene Cantor and the wonderful program that we had that we have at Syracuse. So I think it's definitely invaluable in pursuing a degree and pursuing a lifelong career in disability law.
Yeah, right. So, well, you're all making a difference. Thank you. I'm going to move to the second question and ask Daniel to start us out here. From your point of view, and then I think Carla, Jan, and Cordell will chime in as well, but from your point of view, what are the most pressing issues facing people with disabilities today? Particularly those experiencing multiple and intersectional forms of discrimination as women, as children, people of color with disabilities. Dan, you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. So as you said in the bio, I primarily practice special education law. So that's maybe the lens that I'm going to approach this from. I guess the biggest challenge that I see right now in my work is I almost see a regression back toward segregation right now. And so, you know, at my organization, Disability Rights Iowa, is part of the P&A system. We have fought to stop restraint, seclusion, try to get students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. And now we're starting to see, at least in our state, and I hear stories from other states of local laws trying to protect the right to seclude a student, or there's a big push now to create what they're calling therapeutic classrooms, which are being billed as this is a classroom with specialized people that can help students with behavioral disabilities or other issues. But in practice, what we're seeing is they put that therapeutic classroom in a certain school building in the district, and then kids from other districts get bussed in to go to that special classroom, which now creates a separate segregated school room or building just for students with disabilities. And so that's something that I'm trying to be cognizant of in my work, is pushing back against this resegregation. And of course, restraint, seclusion, expulsion, all these issues have an even greater effect on children with disabilities who are also children of color or who are LGBTQ, young girls of color. It's all intersectional of who is more likely to be moved to these segregated settings or put into seclusion. And I think that that's a challenge that our field is working on right now.
Thank you, Daniel. Coy, do you want to talk about what you see from the mayor's office as the most pressing issues, maybe in Philadelphia, but elsewhere?
Sure. So Philadelphia, we have, it's a very high poverty city. We have a large population of people with disabilities who are also of color. And so I think COVID has only exacerbated these issues. A lot of these people with disabilities have chronic health conditions that, we have not addressed very well in the past. And now it's really, it's taking its toll as far as access to government services, healthcare. One of the issues we see, I think that's really profound, is employment. The ADA was, passed to help people have access to integrated employment, and it certainly has allowed for, many, different people with disabilities to enter many fields, but we still have 19% of people with disabilities who are employed, 33% labor participation rate. So I really do think, we need to do a lot more there, especially with, employment being hard on everyone right now, as far as people losing employment, being laid off, and et cetera. And government services, again, I'm going to come to that. In Philadelphia, we're in the middle of a very, very late ADA transition plan, which I hope to get finished by the end of the year. Governments were supposed to make their programs and facilities accessible certainly by now, and that is still a very large issue in Philadelphia and other municipalities.
Yes.
And relatedly, a lot of the police violence right now, which police is certainly a government service, at least it's supposed to be, a lot of people with mental illness, people with autism are being, exposed to violence, and that's an issue that needs to be exposed a bit more. So, just a few things there.
Thank you. Yeah, and recent statistics show that more than half of the people of color who've actually been subjected to violence by police in particular are people who also have disabilities. And so I think you're identifying, both of you, a lot of really important issues. Anyone else want to chime in? Carla or Jen or Julie on the what you see as the most pressing legal issues? I don't know, Carla, if you have a sense internationally, whether these issues seem to be replicated in other countries beyond the United States. Clearly, the Americans with Disabilities Act was a model for the treaty that was adopted by the UN in 2006, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, that you're working with your office as a special rapporteur to implement. What do you see as the most pressing issues outside of the United States today regarding the rights of people with disabilities?
Mm-hmm. Actually, I would like to highlight from my experience some points in the framework of the COVID-19 pandemic, as the special rapporteur have been providing some guidance for states and other stakeholders on this issue, trying to provide a response that is inclusive of persons with disabilities. And I think it's important because it makes us reflect on, for example, how has been the disproportionate impact on the rights of persons with disabilities, how persons with disabilities have been or are at greater risk of contracting the COVID-19. And this in one of the, in part of, for the inherent risk of institutions that you already mentioned, Professor Cantor, and how all this pandemic is providing us also a lesson learned regarding, or a very powerful message to end institutionalizations that affect a person with psychosocial, intellectual disabilities, and also children. As well, the point of ableism in medical practice. We have been seeing different states that has triage protocols that are discriminatory So intensive care beds and ventilators have been provided based on ableist criteria. As well, the impact of violence, and here to refer to women with disabilities, how women with disabilities have been impacted in a disproportionate way as well by the pandemic and the lockdowns, and how it's important to ensure the access to reports and and service to assist victims and survivors of gender-based violence in this context and beyond. So in general, I think the pandemic is giving us opportunity, an extraordinary opportunity for reflect and try to do the things in a more inclusive way, not only for people with disabilities, but for everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Professor Cantor, only an additional point, because as I am more in the international area, I think that another pressing issue is how to articulate efforts and to mainstream the disability, the human rights-based approach to disability in all the, among all the actors that are engaging in the disability rights agenda, because it's not only that, for example, the special rapporteur on the rights of persons with disabilities or the committee on the rights of persons with disabilities from the United Nations are the only ones who have to implement this human rights approach to disability. That should be that all the United Nations system and all the programs that are behind have this change of rationality to intervene. That's why also it's important that now the United Nations have a disability inclusion strategy to try to do this mainstreaming possible and monitoring as well.
Right. Thank you. Important information. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to move just to the next question, but it can incorporate our discussion about what are the biggest issues. And the next question really is, given this discussion about the pressing issues, not only in the United States, but worldwide, I guess the question for us in the Disability Law Policy Program is what role law can play in addressing these issues. Clearly, there's a role for law. We all believe it because that's why we do what we do. But let's talk a little bit what you think the role of law can be in really changing the world and changing American society to be more inclusive. Shall I start with Jen? You want to start with that question? And then maybe Julie, Daniel, and Bobby?
Sure, I'll start. So I work for the U.S. Department of Education, and I monitor states regarding special education and implementation. And what I think the law in general with the ADA or IDEA really gives us a backbone. However, we as people with disabilities, advocates, allies, need to still make sure that the law is obviously upheld and put forth in the right manner. And I think as far as a pressing issue regarding the law, I think a lot of issues in the law, the way it's written, has been written in some ways, policy or practice, without people with disabilities input. So I think the more people with disabilities that go into law school, that go up the ranks, the better, because we can really use our voices and impact the younger generations, or any generation for that matter, and making sure that we're not the only ones at the table, and also having more voices and more disabilities represented at a table regarding policy, practice, the law, because obviously we all know that the statute is just the start. There's many facets that get down to the person where it actually impacts in a daily basis.
Thank you, Jen. I think Jen's raising such an important point. One thing that the international movement around disability rights created was kind of a slogan, nothing about us without us. And that means that it's people with disabilities who have to chart the course, have to identify the goals, and have to be out there in front as the spokesperson. And for those of us who are allies, it's a very important issue, and an important issue in our disability law and policy program, which is that it's the students with disabilities, faculty with disabilities, alumni, who really I and others would look to direct the vision of our program, because in the end, it is people with disabilities who should be the spokespeople for themselves, not those of us who don't have disabilities speaking for others. So we're conduits, and so I'm going to continue my role as a conduit here now as a moderator, and go ahead and ask a couple more of you to talk about the role of law in disability advocacy. How about Court and Bobby? Court, do you want to say anything else about the role of law in disability advocacy?
Sure. I think issue right now is enforcement of the law. We have, obviously Nothing About Us Without Us is extremely important, but we have some very nice laws on the books.
Yes.
And, but it's enforcement and implementation that is key, as far as not only people knowing that they have rights to enforce self-advocacy is very important to teach that to folks so that they know what their rights are, but also having entities, whether it's government or other other institutions, be able to enforce and practice the law so that it doesn't just end up being text on a page that we
Right.
read in excellent law courses like Arlene's. So,
Yeah, and this is Bobby. I mean, I agree with implementation. I sue people, so that's my answer is we can sue people. And I think disability rights in particular, disability law, really fills in the gaps where a lot of laws are weak. And one area I can think of is policing. So I do a lot of school police cases, and I have a recent case where an 11-year-old was handcuffed and body slammed very violently. And, the case law around incidents like that is terrible. I mean, the Fourth Amendment, excessive search and seizure, even if you can show a constitutional violation, they're likely to have qualified immunity. So no one takes these cases. I really had a hard time even finding co-counsel. But in my circuit, the Ninth Circuit, there's very recently, they recognize an ADA cause of action. So in that police encounter, they owe the child reasonable modifications. So, there's no qualified immunity with that. It's just a much cleaner cause of action. And it's an emerging area of law. So that's what I'm trying to do is, use that ADA cause of action to get relief for my clients, and not only injunctive relief, but damages, because that's sometimes that's the only stick you have to get change. So.
And I'll just add that I have heard from some alum who couldn't be here actually today, who work representing school districts or employers. And one thing that I've learned and been educated about from them is that within the law firms and in their work, they see the importance of advocating for disability rights issues to change the attitudes of employers and others, so that maybe in the end, some lawsuits could be avoided, perhaps not what Bob is describing with is arguably gross violence or abuse, but in terms of employment discrimination claims, which take a long time, which are difficult to litigate and challenging for the plaintiff, who may end up without a job in the end. And so if more and more lawyers also get in the inside and they're working to educate employers, whether it's corporations or startups, as well as others, about the importance of disability rights, law can also perhaps change attitudes there as well. Anything else anyone wants to add about the role of law before we go into how we can advise our future students? Anything else about the role of law? Daniel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to jump into that conversation. I think it's important to remember that the ADA and the IDEA are complaint driven. And so the role of the law, I think, is like Bobby said, we have to bring these cases. And kind of to your point, Professor Cantor, that you just mentioned, in Iowa, there's, maybe one law firm represents the vast majority of school districts. And I have a fairly good relationship working with them. We have a very positive, communicative relationship. And so I've found that, sometimes I'll advise some clients or intakes, well, these are things you can do, and then come back to me if that doesn't resolve it. One example is I had a client recently who is a Spanish speaker, only speaks Spanish, and was not getting IEPs or any documents in Spanish regarding her children. And so I said, okay, well, first send these emails, make this request in writing, come back to me. The school says, yeah, we don't have to do that. You're able to effectively communicate. And then so I just jump in, email the school and say, hi, I'm representing her. And if you do not give her an IEP in Spanish, we will file a complaint. So let me know if you're going to do this or not. It was a very cheeky email, but I was very frustrated. And then the next email I got was how excited and happy they were to provide a translated copy. It'll be there in 5 to 7 days. And we were able to avoid going through the due process, and the family gets what they need. The school maybe learned a lesson, but that unfortunately, I don't think would happen for this parent unless a lawyer is the one that sends that email. And so I think we do have to bring complaints, but there's also a role for attorneys just to call up the school district attorney and say, I don't know if you know that your client is doing this. Do you want to talk to them and maybe give me a call back? And that resolves a lot of issues, at least here.
Right, great example. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we think law can play a role, right? And that's one of the reasons that we want to encourage college graduates, people who work in the field, to come to law school, and particularly obviously our disability law policy program. So the next question I would love to hear from you is what advice you would give to incoming students or even current students about practicing law generally, and about practicing disability law in particular. What do you think are the challenges, the opportunities, and just what kind of advice would you offer? Julie?
Yeah, no, so I've been thinking about that since we talked about this as a question. And I have to say that I wish in law school I had taken more classes on procedure and I had done more trial work, because I have stayed, at a legal services firm. So we're doing litigation, and I do a lot of administrative law where I need the really specific trial practice less, but I wish I had a better grasp, or I wish I had taken classes where I would have learned a better grasp of how to do that, because, having the disability rights background is good, but if I really want to put that in practice in terms of litigation, then I need that piece of it too. And that's something that I didn't take advantage of when I was in school, and I wish that I had. And, Professor Cannon and I have talked before that when you were in law school, you interned at a big law firm for one of your summers, and it was never anything you intended to do full time, but it gave you a really good background. And at the time, I think I was in law school, I'm not sure I saw the value in that, and I see a lot of value in that now, to understand the other side and to get that experience and value that experience. So that's something I would say to people is, yes, focus on disability rights law, but do the trial teams that don't seem to have anything to do with, disability rights law and things like that, because that has so much value if you want to stay on the litigation side of things. Similarly, I wish I'd taken more negotiation classes, right? And I talk with friends now still about, maybe I should go to business school at some point, because there's a whole nother perspective that you can learn if you want to go in with a disability rights perspective and go into business school and take that in and learn those techniques and things too. So I don't think, don't stop learning, and don't think that there's something that's not going to be applicable because you want to do disability rights law. It all comes into play.
And similarly, as some of us say, disability law is infused in every area of law. I don't think there's one area of law where the relevance of disability rights is not applicable. In fact, I want to just take a minute, and then I'll get to Daniel and Jen and Bobby on this question, but I just want to take a question I see in the question and answer, which is basically from one of our participants who is a prosecutor, and is asking, as a prosecutor, what can the prosecutor do to be more mindful and attentive to the needs of crime victims with disabilities? So again, it's an example of how disability is infused in criminal prosecution of cases. Does anyone want to answer that question? Anyone want to respond how a prosecutor can be more mindful about disability rights in the role of a prosecutor? Maybe I'm going to call him Bobby. Yeah, I was going to call him Bobby. And Bobby, there you go. You jumped to it before I even got to call on you. Brings me back to class. Okay.
Sorry. I have a case now. I've never dealt with this issue, but I have a special ed case where the student is also a victim of sexual assault. and the overlap between the accommodations she needs through her 504 plan and how her trauma, you know, caused the need for these, it really opened my eyes. And I'm working with her, you know, her attorney. She has the Title IX, so she has all these different attorneys helping her with that case. And there are a lot of good DOJ resources on how to, you know, to be mindful and attentive to the needs of crime victims. But one thing about this case is this child has autism as well, and she doesn't manifest the trauma or the way that, you know, the police expected her to. And so maybe they just missed her. It really opened my eyes to this. And one thing that I've helped her with recently is, you know, with COVID, she does not want to be on Zoom. You know, her classmates, you know who she is. It gives her a lot of trauma to see their faces and to have her face. So one of the things we negotiated was she can have her Zoom camera off for this, you know? And the district was really hesitant to that. It was just unbelievable how they didn't get it. And it took a lot of sharing these resources and getting, you know, like I said, I brought in her Title IX attorney who's way more experienced with this than I do. And so I think you got to look past kind of stereotypes and also just take advantage of the great resources that are out there.
And I'll just add one thing in terms of prosecutors and some of the work that Carla and I and others have done in other countries, but also here, is that there is a system established where many police and prosecutors and judiciary in the criminal justice system don't necessarily believe people with disabilities. It's particularly people with intellectual disabilities who may not be able to articulate when something occurred or when they were attacked or who attacked them. Or they're afraid and they want to please the person asking them, so they could admit to things that they actually didn't do. There's an enormous amount of growing research on this issue of the lack of access to justice for people with disabilities, particularly in the criminal justice system in this country and many other countries. So whoever asked that question, if you want a bibliography or a list of articles, I'm happy to share them with you. But I would all encourage us, as all you're saying, is to kind of get out of our own attitudes of what we think we know, to be open to hearing the voices of people with disabilities who may be teaching us something that we hadn't thought of before. Yeah, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about what advice you would give, and then Daniel, to incoming students? And one of the questions that came up related to that as well is about externships or internships. And I know both you, Jen, and Daniel, and others have had an array of amazing opportunities. So what advice would you give to incoming students who want to go into the field of disability law? Jen, and then Daniel.
So I think both for allies and for people with disabilities. First, as a person with a disability, I think that you just need to stick with it. Court and I had some fun trials and tribulations during law school with accommodations and with just professors that may not have realized what we brought to the table. And so I think as a person with a disability going to law school, it's probably not the same now at Syracuse, but we, you know, just trying to make sure that you get through. I had also negative with students, their thoughts about disability was similar to what you see in mainstream society. So I think it's just sticking with it and making sure that you know you're there for a reason, regardless of what that reason is, and just to follow your path and not let anybody, you know, dissuade you from that path. And that as far as what I could tell students without disabilities, that what you should do is just make sure to listen to other people with disabilities and know that you serve an amazing role as an ally. Julie mentioned earlier that we have a very strong relationship. I met my husband, who's also an ally in Syracuse law. So I think it's just incredibly important as lawyers with or without disabilities to make sure that you bring disability up in any way that it can be brought up. Did you want me to talk about externships? I'm sorry.
Yeah, or internships. But I mean, one thing that's come up actually, Jennifer, before I turn to Daniel, is that there is currently a student now, a first-year student I've been meeting with, who wants to work at the Department of Education when she finishes law school. And I said that you were going to be on the panel today. I hope she's watching. That perhaps there's an opportunity for her to extern, even with you, in the next year and a half or so. So yeah, could you talk a little bit about internships and opportunities that you see for upcoming lawyers who are still students?
So I think regarding externships, I would echo what Julie said about making sure that you pursue every opportunity. I took an administrative law class when I was in law school, and I think that really prepared me for my role now and what I do currently, and how to really question people besides just in a legal, in a courtroom. And my externships, I did work for a PNA in California, as well as New York, and then Baseilles Center for Mental Health. And the different avenues, be it a PNA or the national with Baseilles, I think it really gave me the breadth of disability law and how you can really pursue anything you want to do with this degree. But I would say to definitely pursue classes that you wouldn't necessarily be attracted to because they don't have disability in the title.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, I guess the two pieces of advice that I would have for current students would be, one, kind of to echo what Julie and Jennifer have just said, is that I would recommend being open to different types of externships and internships. I, before law school, had worked a little bit at the PNA and knew somewhat what a direct representation or direct services model looked like. And so when I was in law school, I knew I was going to do the clinic with Professor Schwartz, which I completely recommend for anyone who's interested in this. And that's also some direct services, some policy work. And so I looked for internships that would maybe be more policy. And specifically, I was interested in doing international disability rights. And so I looked for internships and externships over the summers that would let me be exposed to that maybe wasn't direct representation, but more in research or policy, and trying to get a sense of different types of jobs you can have in this field, right? The second piece of advice I would have for current Syracuse students is that we have a huge network of DLPP alumni all over the country and all over the world. And so I think I speak for most people of the panel and most of our alums that if we are contacted by a student and they have questions about moving to a different state for a summer to work, my office has a law clerk every summer, and it's typically people from Iowa, but doesn't have to be. And I did a summer internship at Dlpp my 2L year, and I had met Bobby earlier, but we didn't overlap. And for a brief period, he let me stay in his apartment for maybe a week, which I don't know that Bobby would offer that to anybody, but but I think we're that kind of alumni group that be open to moving different places or connecting to different people. We have alumni all over the place in P&As, in legal services, in private practice, that might open up geographic opportunities you weren't previously thinking about.
And I'll just say we put together, I don't know if you remember, but it started many years ago and it's updated every year, a guide, which I call a disability job guide, although it's probably a misnomer because what it includes is a list of all of our alumni and where you're working and whether you're interested in mentoring or helping or speaking to one of our current students or recent graduates. And we update it every year, so we need your information if you're alumni to give us your professional address and where you're working and whether you're willing to work with our students. We also include in there now basically a list of most every disability law related office, job, law firm in the country. And we have it available to our law students. I've recently been asked if I would share it with the world, kind of, to all law students, and I have to think about that. But it's been an incredible resource to help students connect with others who are working in the field. I want to also say maybe at this point that Daniel and Bobby were both Equal Justice Fellows. No, what was it? No, correct me if I'm wrong.
I was one too.
In court. Were at Equal Justice Fellow, which is fellowships after graduation. One of the questions posed in the Q&A is any advice for 3Ls. So there are two types of fellowships available for students when they graduate who may allow them to work on a disability-related project in a non-disability related office or at a disability law related organization, Equal Justice Fellowship, as well as the Skadden Fellowship. And we've had now some students, mostly disability law policy program students, receive the Equal Justice Fellowship. And in the history of the law school, we have one student who received the Skadden Fellowship, when that was Julie Morse back in 2005-06. So these fellowships are available, and I guess I was going to call on, was it Bobby who was going to talk about, or anyone else, about the internships, externships, or how to go about finding a summer job or a job after law school. Bobby, you interested?
Sure. I mean, I could do a further pitch for fellowships. I learned about fellowships from Julie when I was interning with her. And what I did was I think leading up to my second summer, I just researched which organizations, collaborate on fellowships in the areas that I want to work on. I interned at Dread of my second summer in Berkeley with the goal of, collaborating with them on a fellowship, and it worked out great. So I worked with them my second year, and then in the beginning of my 3L year, we collaborated on a fellowship. And, fellowships are competitive. I know, there's not enough for everyone, but there are not only Skadden Equal Justice Works, there's many fellowships, there's regional fellowships. I think Yale puts out a guide to fellowships everywhere, public interest fellowships. So it is a really great way to start your career because I can tell you as someone, I run our fellowship program here at Disability Rights California. It is, especially in periods like this where COVID, where funding is limited, it's a way for us to bring on a new attorney to mentor that attorney without the financial burden because it's, there's a third party paying for it. So it really is a great opportunity for students who are in their third year.
Yeah, if I could jump in as well with that. I started my Equal Justice Works Fellowship when the last recession hit, and it was a good feeling to know that you had some funding, but it was also terrible to watch people get laid off. But it does offer some job security, at least for a couple years, and loan repayment. And I do also recommend the model of interning with an organization and then working with that organization to put together a fellowship proposal. And then also you can very often, you can start talking with them about whether you want to stay on full time, or you can start looking at, helps open up opportunities for future employment. So I think it's definitely a great way to go.
And I'm going to ask Julie to mention something, which is that she has been a supervisor of externs in the Legal Services Office in Syracuse for a number of years. And so there's summer jobs we're talking about fellowships after law school. But I just want to make a pitch not to forget about what you can do while you're still in law school. And Syracuse, I have to say, I'm proud to say, is one of the few law schools in the country that allows students to actually go somewhere else to extern for a whole semester. And then return to be a student, take courses at the law school. We have been very successful in arranging for our students to be externs at different law offices around the country, including some private firms that do special education cases, as well as government and public interest. And as an externship supervisor, Julie, do you want to give any students advice about how to succeed in those types of placements? Kind of a trick question. I hadn't thought of it right now, but what can we tell our students about do you think working as an extern helped you get the job at Legal Services? Do you think working as an extern will give you good legal experience?
I think absolutely yes to both of those. And actually I started out externing at Legal Services of Central New York, where I work now, after my first year of law school, and then have basically, sort of just said, can you please just keep me on forever, right? And so now here I am, 15 years later, and I'm still with legal services. But I think what's so good, I remember the first case that I got as an extern was having to look at the law and decide if there was some way we could stretch the law beyond what it said. And I will say, I didn't understand at the time what my supervisor wanted me to do. He's just said, you know, look at the law and tell me what it says, and then tell me if there's something we can do. And so I kept researching the law, and I spent, you know, way too much time researching. And then I went in and he was like, well, that's great. I know what it says, but how do we stretch it, right? Like, what can we do? I want you to think outside of the box. And so to have that, that mentorship was really helpful as a student. And then be able to, and I think then the other part was, as part of the externship program, go back to class and be able to discuss some of what we were doing in that class was extremely helpful. And no different from, I had another externship class where somebody said, well, what would you do if you didn't know the answer? And I said, well, I would ask somebody. And they're like, no, but how would you research that to get to the answer, right? And I said, well, but there are people in my office, and they said, no, but you have to think beyond that, right? So it was helpful to have that class component to the externship program to sort of broaden what I was doing in my externship. And then as far as being a supervisor, I mean, I've had amazing, right? I mean, so like Bobby was in our office back in what, like 2011 or something like that. We've always had really good externs and interns and things like that. And I think it's just an amazing way for people to have experience, you know, get real world experience. Like we try to, you know, take people to meetings and go to hearings and all of this kind of stuff, and let people do as much as they possibly can during the time that they're with us to make it a valuable experience, and hopefully something, you know. And I think those of us who are in legal services, right, and there have been other, obviously, attorneys in my office who are supervising people, we are passionate about what we do, and I think that comes through when we're supervising, you know, interns or externs.
Yes. In fact, one of the questions relates to this, which is, do we see this area of law growing? And I will chime in here that there's no question. One of the reasons we keep our disability law policy program small is I promise basically that if you want to do disability law when you get out, I'll help you get a job. So far, we have a pretty good track record, but that's not because I'm a vigilant advocate for my students, which I am, but because the field is growing and there are more and more offices around the country and the world that are looking for expertise in this area. So absolutely it's growing. To the person who asked if the field is open, as I said, private, public offices, public interest offices, and disability organizations. I'm going to turn to the last question, and then we have a very interesting question actually that's come up about how we're predicting the future of impact litigation in light of the changing makeup of the Supreme Court. So that's part one of the question, is how are we looking to the future of this disability rights field generally? And then second part of the question, personally, what do you see that you would like to accomplish in the coming years? So number one, what do you see as kind of the future of disability rights law, given realities of our world these days? And number two, for you personally, how do you see that you would like to accomplish your goals? And we have a few minutes to finish that, and then we can have some more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Who wants to take that last question first? Carla, I think you wanted to respond to that.
Yes, actually, I was still thinking about the fellowship, because now, currently, I am a Joseph Kennedy Foundation Fellow, International Fellowship, but they have also fellowship for the US. So you can, this is another way there. They are not many, but yes, it's a good opportunity too. And I am in this fellowship supporting the mandate of the first special rapporteur, who was Catalina Evandas, but she actually just ended the mandate, and I am going to do the transition in the following 2 weeks probably to the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to continue to the secretariat of the committee. So Professor Cantor, now you know. I will be there for the next months until the end of my fellowship. And this is what I really would like to continue doing, like to be in the international area, or even working for the United Nations, or even working for any international organization, dealing with projects in different parts of the world. If it's possible with Latin America, will be great. And trying to integrate this intersectional perspective of gender and disability in my work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Court, you want to talk about kind of the future of disability law and your future?
Sure. So as far
You have your magic ball, what is called your magic wand, ready to look into the future.
absolutely, that's what I can do.
Okay.
I'll try to answer this in the second answer to this. The first part of the question, you know, I think it goes back to, and for the students on the call, you know, law doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's really important to know what circuit you're in, what judge you're dealing with, what hearing officer. I'm not saying that that will end, or you know the case isn't over or won based on who's presiding, but I think it helps to know what kind of arguments you're going to make. You know, is it going to be a civil rights one? Is it going to be a cost benefit analysis, fiscal? You know, there's some things to just think about, the realities of who's on the bench. And you know, I don't want to predict the future of who's going to be on the Supreme Court, but I think we all know who the candidates are and what their philosophies are. So I think it's important to work that into your practice, no matter whether it's legal or if you're, you know, if I do a lot of talking to politicians, and I'm, depending on who it is, I might talk about, you know, how people with disabilities might be better at, you know, like the more employment they have, the more taxes they're going to pay, instead of, man, wouldn't it be great if they were all employed? You know, just depends who you talk to there. And as far as what I'm working on is, as I alluded to earlier, we're putting together our transition plan here in Philly for the, under Title II of the ADA. We have 537 city facilities that we hope to make accessible in the next 5 years or so, which is frankly ambitious with our huge budget hole with COVID, but it's, you know, we have to start somewhere. And that's important because a lot of these impact integration. A lot of these sites are parks, libraries, where people go in the community. And if they can't get into the park or go to the library, or, you know, and then they're not going to be fully integrated. So I really look forward to getting that out there by the end of the year so we can move forward.
Right, thank you, Court. Daniel, do you want to comment on that? And then Jen, right?
Yeah, so I think in terms of, I don't know, I might not try the crystal ball in terms of where disability law is going, except that I would say that it is a rapidly growing field. And so I would urge people to remember that you can make a pitch for how disability fits into whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, or if you're applying to a job that isn't disability related on the surface. My first job after Syracuse was at a legal aid organization in Texas under a grant that specifically worked on sexual assault and gender-based violence. And so I just sat down at an interview at a career fair in New York City. And, you know, I didn't have a huge background in gender-based violence, but I sat down at the interview and said, these are statistics about people with disabilities, women with disabilities. This is why you need this in your program. And then I got that job and worked there for a couple of years until I found a disability-specific job that was also a good fit for me. I guess my personal future, I would say my immediate goal is that I am trying to work right now on the intersection of English language learners and students with disabilities, so students who qualify as both. Like many places in the United States, Iowa has 140 languages in our public school systems. And so that is a lot of kids of various languages. And so I'm working on getting our materials translated, like I kind of alluded to earlier, translate for meetings, providing things to families. So my immediate goal is to work up this kind of niche area of ELL students with IEPs and 504 plans. Long term, I mean, I'm always interested in the international disability rights field, and I think you can do that in a, you know, people ask me like, well, if you're interested in international disability work, why are you in Iowa? And I mean, we do have big refugee immigrant populations, and it's kind of, at least I tell myself, right, you can do international disability work anywhere. And so I'm always open to opportunities to maybe do that in a more traditional sense, with inclusive education and international work, but I'm also hoping to kind of do some international work here locally.
And I think, Daniel, actually to your point and related to one of our questions is that with COVID, we've learned a lot about ourselves, about our countries, about the world. And maybe one lesson clearly is that we are all in it together. You know, that the United States is not an island, that we share responsibilities as well as risks. And so what's good for Americans with disabilities and other places maybe are conversations that we need to have more of. So I think it's a really good point well taken. Jennifer, what about you in terms of the future of disability law from your point of view, as well as personally your goals?
Well, I think just to piggyback on the COVID comment and special education, I really see our special education and disability rights going backwards regarding COVID. We have a lot of kids with disabilities that are either secluded or not being provided their IEP accommodations appropriately. And so I think as far as special education goes and the rights of children with disabilities in education, we're really going to see an uptick in the need for advocates and the need for both inside Department of Ed advocates and as well as in every single disability related firm, having really to make sure that kids with disabilities are included to the maximum extent possible, regardless of the composition of the court. And as far as my goal, I have been at the department for 10 years and I never thought that I would stay somewhere for that long, to be quite honest. But I see that there's a lot of work to be done from the inside, and I don't see myself moving. And I do encourage anybody who sees themselves as an advocate for people with disabilities to maybe take roles and positions, whatever they are, in order to really move people with disabilities and the rights of disabilities forward. So I don't see it going away, and I don't see it changing that much. We will still need strong advocates and strong legal stances going forward.
Thank you. And you think 10 years is a long time? This is my 32nd year at the Syracuse College of Law. Time flies. So thank you. Bobby, Court, who was going to say something? I was going to ask Bobby, do you want to talk a little bit about the future of disability law, or your future there and the type of work you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about this and I really can't help but be kind of pessimistic. I think that things are really hard right now. I think there's a lot of great work to be done and we need more people. But, you know, the Supreme Court has made things really hard. I mean, to get attorney's fees, they've made a lot of the procedures really difficult. I just settled a case on a Rule 60 motion that once we looked into the Rule 60 case law, it's just impossible for plaintiffs. So, and that rule is about how to basically end settlements that involve years of court monitoring. So I think the state of exhaustion case law is a mess. I had a colleague the other day say that the state of special ed exhaustion is kind of where the definition of disability was 20 years ago. It is that inconsistent and unclear after the Supreme Court's Frye decision a couple years ago. So I think we have a lot of work to do to kind of, you know, clear up a lot of the areas of law and the court decisions that are harming our clients. And then, you know, I was at a meeting recently where they talked about the importance of keeping anything to do with disability out of the Supreme Court and how much harm that can cause. So I have to be kind of pessimistic about where it's going, but I think that just makes it more important for people to join this field and to fight back.
Thank you. And I have to say, I mean, now having been around the block a few times, clearly it's a challenging time for the court. But I remember when I was practicing in the 1980s and agencies were basically, all their powers were taken away. The regulations weren't enforced. And the battle cry then was, do we even go to court? Because maybe we have to take to the streets. As some of our alums, Stephanie Woodward, who couldn't be here today, for example, is a disability rights lawyer and activist. In those days in the 1980s, we were concerned also about some of the state courts, whereas today maybe state courts are offering better options in some areas of law. No question reasons for pessimism, but the other area also I think that's expanding is the role of regional human rights courts. The United States is a signatory to the Inter-American Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities in particular, and there could be cases that may end up there as well as other avenues. So I agree with you. It's a time of great trepidation about which cases to bring, where, and when. And lawyers like you're meeting today on this panel and colleagues out in the audience are thoughtful and deliberate about which cases to take and how best to serve their clients. But there have been bad times in the past, and hopefully the future will be brighter. And I guess the last question I want to ask really is, how can the College of Law, or maybe I'll ask it and answer it myself, but how can the College of Law continue to advance this important work? Bobby mentioned that we need more people. And frankly, that's one of the reasons that we're celebrating this 15th anniversary, is to kind of get the word out. We want more. We want more students with disabilities. We need scholarships to do that. We need a network of alum who are going to support and mentor one another. We need all of you who are listening and all of you on the panel. And we'll hear hopefully from other alumni tomorrow at our reunion. And I do want to mention here a reminder that tomorrow from 11 to noon, I believe, is the Disability Law Policy Program Reunion. And Daniel has graciously stepped up to kind of coordinate a new disability law policy program alumni group so that we can do a few things. And maybe we'll talk about what we want to do tomorrow. First of all, at least share emails and office affiliations. Maybe we could work together on some cases or write some comments together or advocate in different strategies. The alumni group also can mentor incoming students and graduates and actually help money to raise scholarships. I think one thing that I never wanted to do was think about the relationship between, how do I put this? The relationship between money and education. That I'd like to think that education should be available to all, including law school education. And that's not the case. Law school education has become very expensive, and students with disabilities, like other students, but students with disabilities who are students of color and students with different multiple disabilities have exceptional challenges and need not just mentoring and support, but financial support as well. And I want to thank a few of our alumni have stepped up, and we now offer scholarships to students with disabilities, both in our LLM program, in our JD program. But I really hope that in the future, our alumni network will be close and tight and supportive and be able to sponsor some scholarships for incoming students so that they can continue to do this work. And that is something that we can talk more about tomorrow at the reunion. And Daniel, thank you so much for agreeing to be kind of the leader of the Disability Law Policy Program group. So I'm going to say a few more things at the end, but before I do, I wanted to open it up into questions, if there are any other questions. I did see, any other questions? Anne mentioned some other alum who I think are here today. Another question was, looking at the questions, I'm sorry, is that whether there's any research, and I can maybe respond to this offline, research about the effectiveness of the complaint procedures under the IDEA and the ADA. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of articles, and here you met today practicing lawyers, Daniel and Bobby, who are actually working on IDEA and ADA cases. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you. Another question related to the effect of COVID on your legal practice, and I think you both alluded to, or a few of you alluded to that. I'll just say from the law school's point of view, COVID has introduced a new way of thinking about teaching. I've never before taught remote classes, which is what I'm doing now. And although hesitant at first, I think this opportunity to learn and be together remote has been extraordinary. Not necessarily for Jennifer's young children who she's trying to teach as well as work. I get it, or Julie, the same situation. But clearly, for our law school classes, we now have students from all over the world who are able to literally join us remotely. And that was different than in the past. So maybe there's some opportunities here as well. I don't think there are any other questions. Any other last comments or thoughts that you all want to have before we begin to wrap this up?
This is Daniel. I think one comment that I would put out there is for any of our alums who maybe are not currently practicing disability law or don't have that background, but are maybe interested in exploring it, but don't know where to start. I would kind of echo the same advice as reach out to alums that are practicing and see if there's a way to be involved. And so I can't speak for every P&A, but there's a P&A in every state. And we will sometimes have private attorneys reach out to us and say, I'm thinking about taking a special ed case. I've never practiced. I have no idea what to do under the IDEA. Could somebody call me? And we are always willing to provide technical assistance. Sometimes we'll co-counsel, we'll provide drafts or research. I think the same probably for legal aid and legal services. I'm the only full-time special ed special ed attorney in our P&A, right? We have a couple of lawyers who take cases, but it's me and then maybe 5 or 6 private attorneys that are very expensive. And we're always looking to build the bench of attorneys who represent students. And so I think this is a field that you can reach out to and start to get your feet wet and then pick up a practice area. So don't be afraid to reach out to people that are doing it and see if we would be willing to help you, because I'm pretty sure everybody would be.
Right, thank you. Thank you, so true. And just to call out to a few people, I know Michael Roberts is there. Michael Roberts also couldn't join in the panel, but he's now coming in as an audience participant. He graduated a couple of years ago and now works at Legal Aid doing disability rights cases. So thank you for being here, Michael. And I also wanted to mention that Pratara Jeppe, who was originally scheduled to join us, had a conflict related to her admission to the New York Bar, which is happening today. So as with many of my students, they wouldn't miss anything unless they had a good excuse, and she did. So we will miss her, but she also wanted people to know that she would be happy to be available to talk about her recent graduation experience from the College of Law. I thank you all so much. This has been fun. And Julie, I agree with what you said at the beginning. It's not only fun, it's been somewhat emotional, certainly, for a lot of us. You're an amazing group of people. And although the world can get tough at times, I feel that we're in really good hands with you out there. It's been really extraordinary to be together, to hear what you're up to and hear your ideas and how you're developing your careers. I have no doubt that you will continue to be the leaders in the field in the future. And it's been really a humbling experience for me to learn from you all these years. So to those of you out there, I think we can be proud of the many accomplishments, the milestones of this disability law policy program. Who would have known that you consider, if you are able, to contribute to the disability law policy program as part of your contribution to the College of Law. And I have to say, personally, I have never asked for money before, ever. And I know there are many organizations in need of financial assistance, especially organizations that provide direct services to people with disabilities and their families. I get it. But we also know that change is possible from advocacy, that lawyers have a role, and that this program has meant a lot to a lot of people, and I think resulted in a lot of good things for people with disabilities. So in order for us to continue and grow and to give access to students with disabilities, access to legal education, learning opportunities, externships, clinics, we're going to look to your support. Sophie DeGenius has mentioned, our Assistant Dean for Advancement, that she is happy to talk to all of you, any of you, as am I. And I do want to remind you to join us tomorrow at 11 o'clock for our reunion. If you need the link, you can let me know. But I know that I hope to see many of you there. So contact Sophie DeGenius if you would like more information about giving. Contact me if you want to talk about giving or anything else. And I think with permission, I can give you the emails of our panel today if you want to follow up with any of them individually. But I truly, from the bottom of my heart, now I will get emotional. Thank you all, and wish you great success. So we're going to say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.